We're presented with a diagram that represents an energy pyramid. As you can tell, there are 4 levels. Level D on the bottom, level C above level D, level B and A above level C respectively. In this pyramid, the greatest amount of stored energy is found at which level is our question. We have 4 options. 1, level A, 2, level B, 3, level C, or 4, level D. Now, in order to solve this problem, we have to understand that a pyramid represents dependence. So, for example, for level C to be able to exist as level C, it has to have level D, which is the foundation of the pyramid. It's obvious that without the foundation, there would be no level C, level B, or level A. So level D seems to be the fundamental piece in this pyramid. Level D now would have to have the greatest amount of stored energy in order to sustain all the 3 levels above it, level C, B, and A. So at this point, your answer is definitely going to be level D, which is number 4. A certain species of plant serves as the only food for the young larvae of a particular species of butterfly. In a large field, a disease kills all the members of this plant species. As a result of the plant disease, the butterfly population will most likely 1. Quickly adapt to eat other plants, 2. Disappear from the area, 3. Evolve to form a new species, 4. Enter the adult stage more quickly. Now, if you think about it, we are talking about young larvae. So if we look at number 1, which says quickly adapt to eat other plants, that seems unlikely. It's young larvae. It's too young to adapt. Number 2, disappear from the area. That's quite likely to happen because, again, it's young larvae. It doesn't really know what else to do. There's no more food, and it's going to disappear. So far, looks like number 2 is our winner. 3, evolve to form a new species. Again, it's the young larvae we're talking about. It's unlikely. 4, enter the adult stage more quickly. How can you do that without food? That's hard to tell. So number 4 is incorrect as well. Number 2 is your right answer. When handling cat litter, humans can potentially be exposed to a harmful single-celled protozoan. Its primary host is the common domestic cat, but it also can live in humans. This protozoan is an example of 1. Predator, 2. Producer, 3. Parasite, 4. Scavenger. Now let's go over these options. Number 1, predator. When you look at problems like these, you have to pay attention to the association. A predator is associated with its opposite counterpart called the prey. So, but again, do we have even the word prey in this text? No, we don't. Hence, we don't have anything to do with a predator. Therefore, number 1 is incorrect. Producer. The opposite of producer is consumer. Do we have a consumer here? Well, we have a cat. Cat is a consumer. However, we are not talking about a cat in particular. We are talking about its protozoan. Can protozoan be a producer? No. Number 2 is incorrect. 3, parasite. There is definitely a relationship between parasite and host and parasite. The 2 are in a symbiotic relationship. They help one another. So yeah, that looks like our right answer. Number 4, scavenger. No, number 4 is incorrect. Has nothing to do with host. A parasite would be our correct answer, and that's number 3. Certain seaweeds contain a greater concentration of iodine inside their cells than there is in the seawater surrounding them. The energy required to maintain this concentration difference is most closely associated with the action of 1. Ribosomes, 2. Mitochondria, 3. Vacuoles, 4. Nuclei. Now, let's take a look at ribosomes. Number 1. Ribosomes are associated with proteins as well as amino acids. The text does not even mention any of that. So number 1 is incorrect. Mitochondria. Mitochondria is associated with energy. Do we have energy in the text? Yes, we do. The energy required to maintain this concentration difference is most closely associated with the action of mitochondria. That's your right answer. Number 3, vacuole is associated with space or waste, which again, we don't have that in the text, so it's incorrect. Nuclei is associated with atoms, and we don't have that in the text either. Your correct answer is number 2. Doctors sometimes use a vaccine to prepare the body to defend itself against future infections. These vaccines most often contain 1. Antibodies, 2. Antibiotics, 3. White blood cells, 4. Weakened pathogens. Again, there's an association going on. Antibodies are associated with tags or pathogens in general. We don't have tags, we do have pathogens, but they're not in the text. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to analyze number 1. It's incorrect. Number 2, antibiotics are associated with bacteria. Do we have bacteria here? Not really. We have infection, but not bacteria. Again, the text doesn't really talk about that association of number 2, so it's incorrect. 3, white blood cells. The moment you hear white blood cells, think about immune system, circulatory system. Do we have that? No, we don't. Moving on, number 3 is not correct. 4, weakened pathogens. Absolutely, yes, that is our answer, because the moment you hear vaccines, you think of weakened pathogens. That's exactly what's being put into people when they go for a flu shot, weakened pathogens. So number 4 is our right answer. Building large manufacturing facilities can affect ecosystems by increasing the 1. Atmospheric quality, 2. Biodiversity in the area, 3. Demand for resources such as fossil fuels, 4. Availability of space and resources for organisms. Think about this. When you build a large plant or manufacturing facility of any sort, what really happens? I think you will take away land from the natural habitat, and a lot of animals are going to be squeezed into other corners of that area or away from the area you just took over. So number 4, availability of space and resources for organisms, is not going to increase. So that is incorrect. Again, we're talking about increasing something, okay? Number 3, demand for resources such as fossil fuels. Is that going to increase if you open up a factory, or is that going to decrease? Large manufacturing facilities definitely result in increased demand for resources such as fossil fuels. That is our right answer. Number 2, biodiversity in the area, again, is not going to increase, but rather decrease. So that's incorrect. Number 1, atmospheric quality is actually going to decrease versus increase because of the fumes and smoke and whatnot. So number 1 is incorrect as well. Your right answer is number 3. Moving on. An amoeba is a single-celled organism. It uses its cell membrane to obtain food from its environment, digests the food with the help of organelles called lysosomes, and uses other organelles to process the digested food. From this, we can best infer that 1, all single-celled organisms have lysosomes to digest food. Number 2, amoebas are capable of digesting any type of food molecule. 3, single-celled organisms are as complex as multicellular organisms. 4, structures in amoebas have functions similar to organs in multicellular organisms. All right, let's take a look at this. All single-celled organisms have lysosomes to digest food. We're not debating that, but all we care at this point is, does the text talk about all single-celled organisms? No, it does not. So number 1 is out. Number 2, amoebas are capable of digesting any type of food molecule. Any means all. Again, does the text talk about all kinds of types of food molecule that amoeba is capable of digesting? No. So 2 is out. Single-celled organisms are as complex as multicellular organisms. Is that what the text talks about? Now, structures in amoebas have functions similar to organs in multicellular organisms. That sounds like is our best bet, because it is true. Structures. The text does talk about structures such as organelles, called lysosomes. Those are structures in amoebas, have functions similar to organs. Yes, we definitely can infer that the functions of these structures are similar to organs in multicellular organisms. Number 4 is your winner. Number 3 is not gonna beat number 4 because it's a bit more general than number 4. So remember, you're looking for the best inference here. So you have to pick out of these 4, or in this case 2, the best answer. And I think number 4 is the best answer so far. White blood cells are most closely associated with which 2 body systems? Okay, number 1, circulatory and digestive. Number 2, immune and circulatory. 3, digestive and excretory. Number 4, excretory and immune. Remember, white blood cells, the association with white blood cells, immune as well as circulatory. Why? Because white blood cells fight infections, that's immune system. Now, how do you circulate white blood cells? Using circulatory system. Number 2 is your right answer. Carnivorous plants, such as pitcher plants and sundews, live in bogs where many other organisms cannot. Due to the high rate of decomposition occurring in bogs, the environment is acidic and contains very little oxygen and nutrients. The bogs only support certain types of organisms because, now this text, pay attention, it actually repeats itself, and now it seeks the repetition in one of these answers. 1, organisms in an environment are not limited by available energy and resources. 2, the growth and survival organisms depend upon specific physical conditions. 3, favorable gene mutations only occur when organisms live in harsh environments. Number 4, photosynthetic organisms can only inhabit environments that have a low acidity. Okay, like I said before, this text is repeating itself. Pay attention to the first part. It says, many other organisms cannot live. Why? Due to the high rate of decomposition occurring in bogs, the environment is acidic and contains very little oxygen and nutrients. So, which means those organisms that depend on oxygen and nutrients cannot live there, right? That is our answer. So the bogs only support certain types of organisms because, let's look at the answer now. Which one fits our narrative? Number 1, organisms in an environment are not limited by available energy and resources. Well, that contradicts the text. Number 1 is incorrect. Number 2, the growth and survival of organisms depends upon specific physical conditions. We just said that, didn't we? That's exactly what the text actually is trying to say. So number 2 is your right answer. Number 3, favorable gene mutations only occur when organisms live in harsh environments. That's irrelevant. The text does not address that. Number 4, photosynthetic organisms can only inhabit environments that have a low acidity. Again, irrelevant. The text does not talk about that. So number 2 is your right answer. Anhidrosis is the inability to sweat normally. If the human body cannot sweat properly, it cannot cool itself, which is potentially harmful. Anhidrosis most directly interferes with 1, a feedback mechanism that maintains homeostasis. 2, an immune system responds to harmless antigens. 3, the synthesis of hormones in the circulatory system. 4, the enzymatic breakdown of water in cells. Number 1 at this point is your right answer. Number 2, an immune system responds to harmless antigens. That has nothing to do with what we are talking about. The text is not talking about that. It's irrelevant. Number 2 is incorrect. 3, the synthesis of hormones in the circulatory system. Again, that's irrelevant. Number 3 is out. 4, the enzymatic breakdown of water in cells. Out as well because that's irrelevant. The hair colors of the sons are most likely a direct result of 1, natural selection in males, 2, heredity, 3, evolution, 4, environmental influences. Let's think about this. Number 1, natural selection in males. Well, I don't think it's relevant at this point because we're not talking about natural selection necessarily here. Number 2, heredity, absolutely correct. It's pure heredity trait, so I'm going to go with that. Number 2 is your right answer. Number 3, evolution, takes forever. We don't have that much time going from parents to their children, so that is incorrect. Number 4, environmental influences. We are not even given that, so number 4 is irrelevant as well. Number 2 is the right answer. A sample of DNA from a human skin cell contains 32% cytosine, C bases. Approximately what percentage of the bases in this sample will be thymine, T? We have several options. 1, 18, 2, 24, 3, 32, 4, 36. Now, the way you solve this problem is actually very easy. Just remember these two things. Cytosine pairs up with guanine, right? And thymine pairs up with adenine. Now, here's one thing you have to remember. These two pairs, okay, cytosine and guanine, they have a 1-to-1 ratio, as well as thymine and adenine, they also have 1-to-1 ratio. So what basically means if you have 5 units of cytosine, you will definitely have 5 units of guanine. But then if you have, let's say, total units of 10, then the other 5 are going to be adenine as well as thymine. And then you just divide in between these two totally separate pairs. So for example, in this case, we have cytosine, right, of 32%. Automatically, I know, because it pairs up with guanine, guanine is 32% as well. Like I told you, it's 1-to-1 ratio, okay? So now, obviously, we're talking percentages here, and that means there's 100%. That's the whole number. So 32 of cytosine plus 32% of guanine make up 64%, correct? Now, 64 out of 100, we have 36 left. And remember, the other two, thymine and adenine, are equal. They're 1-to-1. So if you have 36 and you have 2 divided by 2, you'll have 18. Number 1 is your right answer. Carmine, a compound that comes from the cochineal beetle, is used as a food coloring. The food coloring is not harmful to most people, but in a small number of individuals, it causes a reaction and affects their ability to breathe. This response to carmine is known as 1, a stimulus, 2, an allergy, 3, natural selection, 4, an adaptation. Well, at this point, I can tell you for sure, number 2 is your right answer, because the moment you see reaction and inability to breathe, that sounds like allergy to me. As a way to reduce the number of cases of malaria, a human tropical disease, a specific DNA sequence is inserted into the reproductive cells of Anopheles mosquitoes. Which process was most likely used to alter these mosquitoes? 1, cloning studies, 2, genetic engineering, 3, natural selection, 4, random mutations. The moment you hear a DNA sequence insertion, that sounds like genetic engineering to me. When you cut certain segments of genes and then insert that into another organism, that is definitely genetic or engineering. So number 2 is your right answer. Which accurately identifies 2 causes of mutations and the cells that must be affected in order for the mutations to be passed on to offspring? 1, infections and antigens affecting body cells. 2, mutations in meiosis and mitosis will affect body cells. 3, mutations such as disease and differentiation affecting sex cells. 4, chemicals and radiation affecting sex cells. The moment you hear mutations to be passed on to offspring, I want you to automatically think of sex cells. Right away, that eliminates 2 out of 4 options. So now we have 3 and 4 to work with. Now, the mutations that are going to affect the reproductory systems are going to be chemicals and radiation. That's something else that you need to remember. Just think of X-ray being dangerous to sex cells. and you'll never go wrong. So number 4 is our right answer. Chemicals and radiation will affect sex cells. Many tiny plants can be seen developing asexually along the edge of the mother of thousands plant leaf. The tiny plants eventually drop to the ground and grow into new plants of the same species. One way this form of reproduction differs from sexual reproduction is 1. More genetic variations are seen in the offspring. 2. There is a greater chance for mutations to occur. 3. The offspring and the parents are genetically identical. 4. The new plants possess the combined genes of both parents. Okay, the way you solve this problem is through meiosis and mitosis notions. You need to know what they are. Mitosis, just think something along the lines of identical duplication or reproduction. It's literally cloning. That's mitosis. Meiosis, on the other hand, is the opposite of that, which is sexual to start with. Mitosis is asexual primarily. So at this point, if we go one by one through our options, we'll find out that number 3 is your right answer because it says the offspring and the parents are genetically identical. Like I said, this is a plant. They go through mitosis, which is asexual reproduction, and the result of it is identical duplication. So number 3 is the right answer. In this case, we're given a food web that shows certain animals as source of food for other animals. For example, fish we see here looks like it feeds on zooplankton as well as krill. And that is the central theme here with this particular question. So, because it says if the fish population decreases, what is the most direct effect this will have on the aquatic ecosystem? Which basically means what's going to happen to those animals or organisms that the fish used to feed on. Okay? Again, focus on zooplankton as well as krill. Number 1, the leopard seals will all die from lack of food. Irrelevant, we don't need to know that out. 2, the krill population will only be consumed by seagulls. Well, the krill population to begin with was consumed by fish as well as blue whales. So if fish is gone, blue whales will continue eating it. Number 2 is incorrect. The zooplankton population will increase in size. If no one is eating it, of course it will increase in size. Number 3 is your right answer. Number 4, the phytoplankton population will increase in size. Maybe, but it's irrelevant. We don't need to know that. Number 3 is the right answer. Here we're given a sequence of events that was observed at an abandoned ski center over a period of years. Year 1985, the dominant plant species observed was grass. 1995, 10 years later, we have shrubs and bushes. 2005, cherry, birch, and poplar trees. There's definitely something going on in terms of growth and abundance of dominant plant species. So let's take a look at our options. The sequence of changes is a result of 1, ecological succession, 2, decreased biodiversity, 3, biological evolution, 4, environmental trade-offs. Okay, right off the bat, number 4 is out because I don't really see any trade-off here. Number 3, biological evolution takes forever. We're only talking about 20 years here, so that's the 3 is out. 2, decreased biodiversity. It contradicts the data that we're looking at, so it's the opposite. There's actually increased biodiversity, so 2 is out. 1, ecological succession. That's exactly what's going on here. You go from basically an area that was overrun with grass now, and then you have shrubs and bushes, so slowly you are moving towards dominant plant species such as trees. That's definitely called ecological succession. Number 1 is your right answer. Some salmon have been genetically modified to grow bigger and mature faster than wild salmon. They're kept in fish farming facilities. Which statement regarding genetically modified salmon is correct? 1. Genetically modified salmon produce more of some proteins than wild salmon. 2. Genetically modified salmon and wild salmon would have identical DNA. 3. Wild salmon reproduce asexually, while genetically modified salmon reproduce sexually. 4. Wild salmon have an altered protein sequence, but genetically modified salmon do not. I want to draw your attention to number 4. Number 4 is funny. It's a joke. Wild salmon have an altered protein sequence. That makes no sense. Wild salmon are natural, so there is no altered protein sequence. Genetically modified salmon do not. Well, it's the other way around. So anyway, number 4 is funny and it's incorrect. Number 3, wild salmon reproduce asexually, while genetically modified salmon reproduce sexually. It makes no sense. It's funny. It's a joke. Out. Number 2, genetically modified salmon and wild salmon would have identical DNA. If they did, then what's the difference? The text talks about the differences in growth and maturity. Number 2 is out. Number 1, genetically modified salmon produce more of some proteins than wild salmon. That explains the bigger growth and faster maturity. Number 1 is your right answer. Which group of organisms in an ecosystem fills the niche of recycling organic matter back to the environment? 1, carnivores. 2, decomposers. 3, producers. 4, predators. Take a look at this phrase, the niche of recycling organic matter, which means this organism does exactly that. And that's the only thing it does. Carnivores. Is that what they do? Really? Like the only thing they do is recycle organic matter? I don't think so. 1 is out. Decomposers. What do? They do recycle organic matter. Anything else? No. Number 2 is your right answer. 3, producers. No, they do many other things. So it's out. Number 4, predators. They definitely do not recycle organic matter. It's out. Number 2 is your right answer. The use of solar panels has increased in the last 10 years. A benefit of using solar energy would include 1, adding more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. 2, using less fossil fuel to meet energy needs. 3, using a non-renewable source of energy. 4, releasing more gases for photosynthesis. Okay, I'd like to draw your attention to number 1, adding more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Well, that makes no sense because that's exactly why we use solar panels, in order to decrease the carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So number 1 is incorrect. Number 2, as a result of using solar energy, we are going to have less fossil fuel to burn. Absolutely correct. Number 2 is your right answer. Number 3, using a non-renewable source of energy makes no sense because that is coal, that is fossil fuel, and that is not a benefit of using solar energy. So that's 3 is out. Releasing more gases for photosynthesis makes no sense. 4 is out. Number 2 is your right answer. In a sewage treatment facility, an optimal environment is maintained for the survival of naturally occurring species of microorganisms. These organisms can then break the sewage down into relatively harmless wastewater. For these microorganisms, the wastewater facility serves as 1, its carrying capacity. 2, a food chain. 3, an ecosystem. 4, an energy pyramid. Let's analyze the answers. Carrying capacity literally means a census. How many organisms can you fit in a given area? Number 1 is out because that's not what the text is talking about. Number 2, a food chain. We're not talking about food chain in the text. Number 3, an ecosystem. Yes, these organisms feel kind of comfortable because remember, in a sewage treatment facility, the text says an optimal environment is maintained. So which means an ecosystem is maintained for the survival of naturally occurring species. Number 3 is your right answer. Number 4, an energy pyramid. I don't see that happening. There are no plants, there are no carnivores or apex predators, so 4 is out. 3 is your right answer.